From a career in the film industry to a full-time real estate professional, Lauren Morelli shares her story of how she made the transition and how she hit her stride in real estate by farming and by door knocking. Lauren has some great advice for new agents. Stick around to hear about her journey.
Welcome to Unlocking Real Estate, My First Commission, where we dive into real stories, big wins, and early lessons learned from highly successful rookie real estate agents and brokers. This is the series where we explore how real estate transforms lives, one home at a time, by sitting down each week with a new agent or broker who has found incredible success in their first year. Your hosts are instructors and leaders at Colibri Real Estate School, one of the largest real estate educators in the nation, where we focus on helping people like you get started or find continued success in their careers.
Hello, and welcome to Unlocking Real Estate, My First Commission. I'm your host, Tina Lapp, Head of Industry Relations and Career Excellence for Colibri Real Estate. I've been in real estate education for over 30 years, and I love helping individuals enter and thrive in their real estate careers. We are here today with Lauren Morelli. Lauren, welcome. Will you take a moment to introduce yourself, where you live, and what company you're with?
Sure. I'm Lauren. Hi. And I live in Los Angeles, and I'm with Berkshire Hathaway in the Santa Monica office.
Wonderful. And that's an exciting market for sure. We talk to folks all over the country, so love when we get California. So Lauren, let's start kind of at the beginning of your real estate journey. What were you doing before you got into real estate?
So I was actually a costume designer for movies and TV in the film industry. I had spent my whole life training for it in high school and college, going to film school. And so I did it for quite a while.
Wow. And so I've got to ask, how did you go from that to real estate? Like, how did that happen?
So I got sick of the hours, honestly.
Okay.
It was long hours. And once I met my now husband, I wanted to spend more time with him. In my 20s, it was like, go, go, go. You know, I've got the energy. And then I got into my 30s and was like, oh my God, I need to slow down. Honestly, COVID is kind of what sparked all of this, because it was the first time I had sat down in a long time and just was able to like enjoy my life and do nothing. And my husband and I had so much fun together. We were so happy.
Pros and cons of COVID years.
Exactly. So that kind of sparked the, I want to make a change and do something else with my life.
Yeah, and so I can absolutely understand that. I think COVID changed a lot for a lot of folks. You said you were a costume designer. I just got to say, were you nominated for an Emmy?
I was.
I just wanted to say it. That's amazing. So you had this great career. COVID happens, things slow down. Why real estate? Like, how did that come about?
Well, first I wrote a list, where I was like, okay, what are the jobs where I can be able to make, the same money that I'm making in the film industry, because now I have a house and, all these bills and all that stuff, but also where I can kind of have more control of my life and not necessarily be answering to a corporation. And so I was looking at like hairdressing, because I was like, that looks like a lot of fun, going to beauty school, a ton of different things. And, I talked to my parents, and them being in real estate for 50 years, I knew that they worked like crazy, they worked holidays, on our vacations, everything. But I just was like, you know what? That seems like the best fit for me, since I already kind of know, some things about it.
Yeah. So that's great that you had a little bit of exposure growing up to real estate. The hours, like you saw your parents working around the clock. Interesting. You said the hours moving out of costume design, but it's different. It's really different, I think. So,
well, you know what, when you're working for yourself, then it's like, it doesn't feel as grueling as when you're turning in a time card and you're like, oh my God, are they going to let me go? Can I go home?
Because that is like, you are your own boss now, right? And you get out of it what you put into it. So you decide, sort of working with your parents, maybe they were some of your inspiration. You decide to get your real estate license. Just real quick, because we've got a lot of folks listening who are thinking about doing this. So
Mhm.
you decide to do it. What'd you do? Like, you found a school? Walk us through that process.
Yeah, I just kind of made the decision where I
Yeah.
was like, I'm going to try this. I
Yep.
have to do something, and take the leap. And on New Year's Day, they had a sale, 50% off classes.
Yeah,
And I
there you
said,
go.
this is my New Year's resolution. And so I was still working full time, in the
Mhm.
film industry at the time. And I
Wow.
jumped in and said, I'm going to do it.
Wow. Yeah. So you're working full time in the film business. And were you taking classes at the same time that you were going through, like working full time? Sorry, were you going
Yes.
through classes? And did you do it
Yes.
at night? Were you online? How'd you do it?
I did online so
Okay.
that it was a little bit easier,
Yeah.
because my schedule, sometimes I was at work at 3 a.m., until
Oh,
5 p.m. Other times I was working overnight, so there was no way that I was going to be able to actually go make a regular class because the film industry, the hours are 24 hours a day.
wow. Wow. So you did it online. How long did it take you to get through the required courses?
I would say about 4 months,
Okay.
probably,
Yeah.
because I was working full time.
Yeah.
So, and they also tell you, you have to wait like a certain number of weeks, like in between before you can, you have to take 6 weeks or whatever on each course. So,
Yeah, yeah. California is unique in that way. It's one of
yeah.
the few states that requires that. So you got through the courses. You went to the state exam. I assume you obviously passed at some point.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
how did you get through? Like, was it stressful trying to get through the classes and work full time, or did you kind of get in your groove?
I mean, I've always been pretty good in school,
Yeah.
so it's like it wasn't, and it was interesting
Okay.
information for me,
Yeah.
which I think really helped. And it was the excitement of I'm making a really big change in my life, so
Yeah.
it didn't feel grueling or hard.
Yeah.
Studying for the final exam was definitely very scary. And my husband
Sure.
helped me, and he was like falling asleep asking me the questions because he was like, oh my God, why are you doing this? It's so boring.
Yeah, no, it's not
Yeah.
boring. Yeah, that's fun. It's great.
Yeah.
You had support going through the courses.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
what were your expectations going into your first year?
I mean, I knew, from my father had Century 21 brokerages in New York and New Jersey, and my mom would train the new agents. So they knew and were able to tell me, like, your first year, expect to make nothing, like, don't expect to have a transaction. It takes time,
Mhm.
and you're not going to be able to work and do this full time if you want to do it quickly, and get to that point. So
Yeah,
I wanted to, I was like, I want to get, a transaction my first year, like beat those odds,
yeah,
but I knew that it was going to take time and it could
yeah,
take 2 years.
yeah. And so, how long after getting licensed did you get your first transaction?
So I got licensed in the summer, but I was still doing other things. So I
Hmm.
started like January, like really taking it seriously and, joining an office. And then October, I had 3 sales that literally closed one day after another. So
Wow.
my first time in escrow, I was in 3 escrows, which was very overwhelming. But
Yes.
yeah, so it all just happened.
All
Yeah.
just happened. So less than 10 months. So your
Yeah.
first from the time you close. And did you start full time or part time? Like, were you doing real estate part time at first and still in the film industry, or how'd you make that break?
No. No, because I mean, just with the film industry hours, it's like there's no way that I
So you
can do
just,
both. Like, it's just not possible. I thought about it where I said, but also the strikes were going on.
mm,
So there really wasn't the opportunity to be
yeah.
able to work at the same time because that started happening once I had been in maybe like 6 months. So yeah, I just made it full time. I
Yeah.
every day
Good for
full time.
you. I love that. I talk to folks all the time and I ask them what they would do differently. And usually the ones that started part time say, I would have gone full time sooner. And so there you are, 3 closings in the same month. You hit your groove really, really quickly. That's amazing. So when you got licensed, did you find a brokerage to affiliate with?
So I started with a brokerage that my friend was at, and she was a very successful real estate agent.
Yeah.
But I was there for maybe like a month. And it just, I don't know, it didn't feel like a good fit for me because they also didn't really have educational courses, or anything like that. And I was like, I really feel like I need like some classes on how to actually do the contracts and how to do an open house and how, to do all that stuff. So I ended up moving to Berkshire because another friend that was an agent of my friend of mine, she recommended Berkshire Hathaway Santa Monica and like 2 other offices. And I talked to all of them. And I really liked this office because it was smaller. So I felt like I wasn't going to get lost in a sea of agents. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to be able to talk to my branch manager more regularly. And they also give you a mentor, which was that was something that I was like, okay, that's great. Because then I have someone I can call.
Yeah, there's so much I love about what you just said. I mean, one is talking about finding the right fit, right? Like the brokerage makes such a difference. And you had a friend highly successful at another company, and that's fine. But for you, you kind of found your fit and where you belonged. And the other, just having the additional support and education. Did that mean a lot to you in your first year? Well, like what kind of training did you engage in?
Well, Berkshire Hathaway has what they call the Success Path program. And they do it maybe like once every 2 months. And it happened to be as soon as I was joining the office, like that week they were starting. So I think it's online. It's like 3 days a week, 3 hours each time. And they have different segments where they'll bring in, either top producing agents or they have teachers, and so it was teaching you like how to read a purchase agreement. And like what these things mean, which was helpful, and like how to do an open house, how to do marketing, a lot of like the basics so that at least I felt like I knew what I was talking about when I was trying to get clients, which was really helpful.
Yeah. And you were set up with a mentor. So tell me how you worked with that mentor.
So she is very much into the paperwork, which is what I needed help with because you print it out and it's like 10,000 pages and it's tiny little fine print. And I was like, oh my God, like I have no idea which box to check. Like, what does this mean? And so before I even had a listing or buyers, she made me read the entire contract with her and highlight things I didn't understand. And I'm really grateful for that because that is actually, I think, how I've been getting my listings is I go through that contract now with my clients and then they trust me and they feel comfortable with me and they go, oh my God, like no one has explained this to me. So I think that was probably the most valuable thing that I got from her.
I love that, Lauren. That's great. What a great little golden nugget right there for individuals. So how did you market yourself as a new agent? Like you're brand new, recently licensed. Did it matter? Like what was your sort of marketing pitch?
I did everything. I tried all of it. All of it because, I tried cold calling, did not like that. I tried going after expireds. That didn't really work for me. I did open houses for other agents. For some reason, I wasn't getting anything from that. But I farmed my own neighborhood. And so I door knocked, I did door drops. I would, I would walk the neighborhood. I think it took me like 8 hours because I couldn't afford to pay somebody to hand out the flyers. And so I would drop flyers once a month, at everybody's door. And I would send out postcard mailers, just about different things in real estate because I didn't have any business, to say, oh, I sold this or I have this yet. Just kind of giving information so that people would hear my name as a real estate agent. And then I finally honed in on what actually was working. And so I was able to focus on those things and just do that.
Yeah, that's great. So did your first few clients, I guess the 3 that all hit in October, did they come from those efforts?
Yes, they did.
Yeah. Okay.
So literally the first door I knocked on, she said, well, actually, I am looking to sell my house. And I couldn't believe it. And so I went back to her house every single day. I'd go to Trader Joe's and buy an orchid plant for her and, just came to say hi and all that stuff. And then she finally said, well, come see the house. And so we set up a listing appointment. So that came from door knocking. I met another neighbor door knocking, and he referred me to my second clients for that listing. And I got that listing also. And then those clients ended up buying a new home. So that was how I got the third sale.
Yeah, perfect. So you found your niche and you hit it hard. Did you utilize any social media? Are there any platforms you're on?
I had to get a TikTok and I did an Instagram and a Facebook, and I hate doing all of it. It's so not me. But, I would sit in my yard and I would just write these little scripts of how to negotiate, during escrow as a buyer, or here's what you need to include in closing costs when you're budgeting for yourself, or, just different things, different topics. And I would just talk about it. And I learned that my clients were looking me up on Instagram because they found my name, because it's really simple. It's just at Lauren Morelli. And they loved, that I was doing that. And so they felt like they already kind of knew me before they met me.
Yeah.
So I think that was actually really helpful.
Yeah. And just establishing credibility and sharing your personality. You are human after all, aren't you?
Yeah. Yeah. And people always love the house tours, when you go to the big $5 million houses and, show all the pretty things, all my friends would say, oh my God, I love that house.
Yeah.
Even if they're not interested in buying or they're not ready, even just they enjoy looking at it. And then they see me now as a real estate agent rather seeing me as a costume designer, because I have to make them make that shift.
Yeah. That's a good point. I didn't even think about that. You're changing your career and how they look at you. And so I love that you talked about all the different things you tried, because once again, everybody's different. It's a wonderful thing about the world, right? We're all different. And some things work for folks. Some people, they love open houses. They do all kinds of open houses. Other people say, I hate open houses. They don't work for me. But you found your niche and built your business on it, and door knocking and focusing on your neighborhood, and then getting referrals now, right? Mm-hmm. That's amazing. Yeah. So tell me about the biggest challenges. I'm sure it wasn't all roses every day your first year, right? What are some of the realities? What were some of the biggest challenges for you?
I think, honestly, for me, it was the emotional challenge of feeling like I am putting everything into this and nothing is happening. Yeah. I think that was the hardest part, because I'm very much a perfectionist, and I want to succeed quickly, and I want to be, a top producing agent, and all that. And so just having the drive to just keep going and trusting, and I would talk to my branch manager and say, I'm thinking about just being someone's assistant and, maybe quitting. And she would say, please don't quit. She said, if you're doing everything, it has to work, because it works for other people. So why wouldn't it work for you? It just takes the time. Yeah. So I think that was honestly the hardest part for me.
Yeah. And just sit steady and true, and then it finally clicks. And yet it takes a little bit of time, but once it hits, it hits. So, so do you today have a support system or a mentor still in place? Do you still have questions? Do you still have someone you can go to?
The mentorship program, you just do your first 3 transactions at Berkshire Hathaway with that person. I feel like I call my parents, sometimes, and I'm like, what do I say? But if I have contract questions, I ask my branch manager, because it's honestly, the paperwork's pretty self-explanatory, most of it, once you get past the listing agreement and the purchase agreement. So I'm more just asking her okay, which form do I have to use, for this? So I would say between her and, my parents knowing a lot about real estate, that's my support.
Yeah, it's got to be helpful knowing you do have the opportunity to call a friend and get some advice, right? I think
Yeah.
not just in real estate, but in general in life, it's
Yeah.
always nice to have
Yeah.
someone to call, right? So, any funny or memorable experiences from your first year, either something that went wrong or a particular client that touched you? Anything you can think of from your first year?
So I had one day that I cried. And it was because I had a listing and it was falling out of escrow for the third time.
Oh,
And we had like 11 offers. So we just kept going to the next person, to the next person. But it had a lot of issues that came up in inspection. And because it was the price point of like a first time home buyer, they got scared. Where they go, oh my God, that's too much work. It was a total fixer, but it had great bones. And so when I got to that third buyer that the agent called and said, he wants to pull out, I'm so sorry. He wants to cancel. And I just was like, how do I even break this to my clients? Like the third time. And they had to sell, like they had to. And so I said, I'm not going to say anything until I actually have the paperwork in hand. And this is definitely a big lesson that I'm like, I'm glad I did that, because at the last second, he changed his mind and said, I am going to stick with it. And I never had to tell the client that it was going to fall out of escrow. So that's like something I was like, you know what? I was like, never tell them anything until you actually have the paperwork signed, because people can change their mind. It can happen.
Anything can happen in real estate.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. So that was definitely where I was like, oh my God, this is like, this is tough. Yeah. Like it's not always easy.
It's not always easy. And I got to tell you, what caught my attention with what you just said in that story was your biggest concern was having to tell your client and the people relationship. It wasn't about the money. And and obviously that's what drives you, right? Is working with the people. I just get that from you for sure.
Yeah. Well, and what's funny is that when I asked those clients to do a review about me on Zillow, they actually said, Lauren cared more about us rather than her own profit.
Yeah.
And I think that makes a big difference. And it's like, of course, I need to make money, but it's the relationships that I build with people. I want them to feel comfortable and trust me, so that they'll refer me.
Yeah.
And also it's a better experience for everybody.
It's a better experience for everybody. Yeah. And then the money will follow, right? Like I think that's such a big lesson. It caught my eye. I just wanted to point it out because I love that. So how do you continue building relationships with clients? Like, is it a one and done? Do you talk to them after? Like, how do you ensure you get those referrals down the road?
So I keep in touch with them. I try to do like a lunch, every 6 months, something like that. I give them, like right now, I made holiday baskets for everybody. So it's an excuse for me to, go see them in person, check in how they're doing. I do an e-newsletter that I send to all of them. And I've noticed like through Berkshire Hathaway's CRM, I can see who's reading it. And so they'll read it. And at the end, I always say like, oh, I always love my clients and I would appreciate a referral. So instead of like talking about them buying and selling, it's more like, this is what's happening in the market. And if you have a friend, or a loved one, like I'd love to talk to them. Yeah. So I think it's just having those like consistent touches. And one of my clients is crazy about the LA Kings, the hockey team. And my husband works for the hockey team. So we go to games all the time. Yeah. We have a blast together. Awesome. So, I think it's like making it also kind of a friendship and not just super business. Yeah. I think that's what helps.
Yeah. And so how do you spend your time? Like, are you involved in the community? Are you like, how do you manage your time? What kinds of things are you doing outside of what people would think of as traditional real estate?
Yeah. So I do donation drives in my neighborhood, in my farm. And so when I send out like a market report or a flyer, which now I pay someone to do, which is amazing. It's not that much money, and I get them professionally printed. I'm not just printing them on the copy machine at work. I'll say like, hey, I'm doing, a toy drive for the Midnight Mission for the holidays. If you have anything you want to donate, give me a call. I'll come pick it up from you. Or sometimes I sit in my yard and then the neighbors come, they bring food or clothes or, whatever. And you get to meet people that you haven't necessarily met before, and then I try to get their email and put them on my newsletter and, just talking to them, it's like just me. It's like, I have to get in front of as many people as possible. Like that is my goal, to have as many conversations as possible. Because once people like me and trust me, and they keep seeing my name in the neighborhood with the mailers and stuff, then when, oh, you know what, we might have to sell in a year. Could you come over, and just let me know what the house is worth?
Mm-hmm. And then there it begins.
Yep.
So super exciting first couple of years. What's next for you? Where do you see yourself in, say, 5 years?
I want to grow a team. That's what I would like to do very much. Yeah. I mean, I, mentored in the film industry and, would work with teams of 35 people. And, so I think that's something I would really like to do, is kind of collaborate with others. Just grow a team. I want to be a top producer.
Big goals, and I have no doubt you'll get there. So any tips or tricks that you would share with aspiring real estate professionals?
I think what you were saying, the managing the time is really important. Like one of the things that actually another agent in my office told me that I really held on to is my prospecting time. Because I have a whole like Excel spreadsheet calendar of like for months of everything I'm doing every day with following up and listing appointments and all this stuff. I have to block out my prospecting and treat that like it's a listing appointment. Like nothing else is getting scheduled during that time, because otherwise all this other stuff starts happening, and then I'm not door knocking, or I'm not sending emails, or I'm not doing this and that. And, I have to keep going to get more business.
Yeah. Yeah. So it sounds like you're pretty disciplined with your time.
I try.
So do you block any time for yourself?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had like 3 weeks, last month that I did not have any time off because I had 4 listings all at once, and it was like everything's coming on the market and my husband was out of town, so the cats got sick and, it was like everything happened. Yeah. But usually what I try to do is his schedule is erratic with his days off. So I try to kind of match it with him where I'm like, okay, if he has the afternoon off, then I'm going to try to take the afternoon off. Yeah. Because real estate really is kind of a 7-day-a-week job, because I can work Monday through Friday, but then I'm doing open houses for my own listings or showing properties on the weekend. So you rarely get like an actual full day off. So it's like scheduling those breaks where I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to lunch with a friend today, or I'm going to go to a dance class, or I'm going to, it's like you have to find the time and just build it in. Yeah. But having an actual day off is very difficult.
Yeah. So when you talk about flexibility in real estate, it's there for sure. Like you have some control and flexibility, but that does not equate to you don't work, right? Like you're working 7 days a week.
No, and I think like the difference between me, honestly, and my parents and watching them work 24/7 is that having had that experience in the film industry and that being one of the driving factors is I don't want to get to that point. Yeah. So I learned that it is so important to have time for myself and my family. Yes. And be able to take a break at the same time.
Yeah. And you won't burn out that way. That like you have that time for yourself. Yeah. Great advice. So we're going to go into our lightning round. It's a couple questions, just first thing that comes to your mind, 60 seconds or less, just some fun stuff about you or real estate, whatever you want. So the first one is, do you have a book or a podcast that you've read or listened to that you would recommend to the audience?
I actually don't listen to podcasts or really read books.
Yeah, that's
I don't know. Fair. I haven't gotten into that, but I think like what I really like when you become a real estate agent, you get a million marketing emails, and I like watching and taking all those online classes, you know, even if I'm not going to buy the thing that they're selling, just to kind of learn, oh, here's a new way, you know, to practice, or here's somebody else's experience.
Yeah. Yeah. And using those for like keeping up on what's going on in the market, right? Like, cause there's a lot.
Yes.
If we had a time machine and you could go back to the day you started this journey, what advice would you give yourself?
I think I would say just keep pushing.
Yeah.
Just keep pushing. It's okay. You're going to make mistakes. You know, stop saying, I don't know what I'm doing, you know, and just trust in the process.
That's great. That's really, really good advice for yourself or for anyone. So if you could have dinner with any person, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
It would be my grandpa on my dad's side, because he passed away when my dad was 18. So I never got to meet him.
Wow.
And he immigrated from Italy, you know, and I love my Italian heritage. And just with like what a fun, loving person my dad is, I would have loved to get to meet him.
Yeah, that would be a really special dinner. And I assume you'd go out for Italian.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, right? Like, there's no question. Tell us about what you did at work yesterday. What was your
a lot.
Yeah, good. This is a good one. Okay.
So I've been trying to convince someone to let me have the listing. I've been working on that, and they'll only do it in text message. They won't talk to me on the phone, which is frustrating. But I'm getting close. And then I had a phone call or 2 phone calls with buyers that I'm going to start working with. I had one sign the BRBC, and we're going to look at some stuff on Saturday. Gosh, I can pull up my calendar. I went around the neighborhood, and the neighbors that like, you know, I've built a relationship with, I wrote little holiday cards. And so I handed those out, you know, just another way to knock on someone's door, say hi, give them some hot chocolate. I scheduled dropping off my baskets to my, you know, my past clients. So it's just a lot. It's like in even all those things, it's like, I have to consider prospecting, even if I'm not actually knocking on the door. Like it's some prospecting every day.
Yeah. That's great. It's a good day for sure.
Yeah.
So Lauren, where can listeners and viewers connect with you or follow your journey?
I mean, I guess on Instagram or TikTok, it's just at Lauren Morelli.
Perfect.
You know, or if anyone, you know, wants to email me or reach out or anything like that, I'm happy to talk.
Awesome. And Lauren, any final words of advice for individuals who are thinking about starting a career in real estate?
I would say do it 100%.
Okay. Like
make it the full-time job. You know, it's really hard. I mean, and I know financially, you know, it's like, it's tough, you know, because you're not going to make money for a little bit. You know, so you have to have savings, you got a budget, you know, but find things you can do for free. You know, find stuff you can do for free. Like our printer's free at the office. I'd print out 1,000 flyers, walk around the neighborhood, you know, it's gotta be that full-time job.
Yeah.
Everything is real estate.
Well, great advice. Lots of golden nuggets in here. Thank you, Lauren, so much for joining me today. I've loved the conversation. Congratulations on your success, and can keep it going, girl.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in to Unlocking Real Estate, My First Commission. We hope today's stories and insights inspired you to take that next step in your real estate journey. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode, or head over to our channel to see some of the other content we've produced. We'd also love to hear from you. Drop a comment below with your biggest takeaway or a question for our next guest. If you have a recommendation for someone we should interview, please send a note to unlockingrealestate@colibrirealestate.com.